This is a Willets Point Shea Stadium bound 7 express train. The next and last stop is Willets Point, Shea Stadium.
Oh, yes, it is. Anthony Rivera here with you, talking about all the news and happenings surrounding that team from Queens, the New York Mets. It's a Subway to Shea series preview as the Mets welcome in the Philadelphia Phillies for a 2-game set at Citi Field. They'll also be playing a 2-game set in Philadelphia, but right now we're just going to be covering the 2 games at home. I wasn't too sure of the pitching matchups in games 3 and 4 in Philly, although we did just find out a few moments ago that Adrian Hauser will be pitching on Wednesday. Take with that what you want. I know a lot of people are probably not happy about that, but Adrian Hauser will be starting on Wednesday. A couple other quick notes. Drew Smith should be coming off of the IL. His stint in rehab is over, so he should be back tomorrow. And we're just waiting on Kodai Senga still to figure out if Kodai Senga is going to be throwing against some live batters soon. I know there was some issues with his mechanics, and he was, I don't want to say shut down, but they wanted to get his mechanics right before he got into in-game situations. And I promised you a guest co-host, and I got my guy. Saw him on Saturday. We suffered through the 8 2/3 innings pitched of a no-hitter.
That was nasty.
A lot going on with my guy, David from Top Bunk Sports. What's up, brother?
How are you, man? Thank you for having me. I'm excited, man. I'm actually going to the game today, so hopefully I don't get the same results as Saturday.
Yeah, I hope you fare better off Saturday better off today than we did on Saturday.
Right. Yeah, I hope so. I'm praying for one. I know we spoke about it. We're like, imagine if they have this performance against the Braves, but then all of a sudden they cool off the red hot Phillies. Imagine that.
I was thinking about that too, right? Like they're gonna get us pumped, right, for Friday, right, and then they'll have like a couple stinkers, be at 500, and we're around that roller coaster again. Let's shout out the chat here. 53 people here off the bat to start off. We haven't even gotten started yet, and 53 people are in the house here. Shout out to Deron Williams. Shout out to Maureen. Shout out to who else was in here? I saw Brad. He's also a junior swingman in the house. My guy Keith from Shea and Sons in the house.
Yes,
what's up, my friend? That's it. He's in the house. I hope you guys checked out his series recap last night where he called the actual home run for Brandon Nimmo, and that was pretty cool. Retweeted that if you haven't checked that out, but watch the whole show because you got to check that out. I got Lane Kerner in the house. See who else? A Shea parking lot. My guys in the house. What's going on, everybody? Great to have you all in here. Excited to be doing this show with you guys. Like I said, it's about, I want to say 12 hours ago, this show was going to take on a different tone if Brandon Nimmo didn't come up to bat and kind of save this team with, what was he had was it intercostal? What is it called?
Yeah, something like that.
Intercostal.
I threw me off too.
Yeah, intercostal irritation. So, man, I let's get into the recap here of what happened this weekend against the Braves. And, starting off game 1, Jose Quintana struggling with the long ball, 5 innings pitched, 6 hits, 4 runs, 4 earned runs, 2 walks, 3 Ks. The thing that struck me about this, and we can get into it in a little bit, is that he gave up those home runs with 2 outs, man. That's the kicker. He had Albies gave a home run to. He gave a home to Acuna, and then a 2-run shot to Olsen, and that was pretty much it for the Mets there. They were only held to 4 hits. They struggled all weekend hitting. Lindor hit a home run on Friday, and Alonso collected 2 hits. So it's nice to see those 2 guys get out of their struggles as of late, especially Alonso. Lindor has been has been pretty much gotten himself back on track, but Alonso we were worried about. Game 2, which you and me were at, Christian Scott's home debut got spoiled because the Mets offense decided to go 8 2/3 without getting a hit. Only that one big home run to stop that from our guy JD Martinez. Christian Scott, I thought he pitched pretty well. We'll get into that as well. 6 innings pitched, 6 hits, 3 runs, 3 earned runs, 2 walks, and 8 strikeouts. Nice to see him with those strikeouts out there as well. And let me see if I can get rid of this real quick. All right. So I can read that. Mets offense, like I said, it was held. Max Fried, Joe Jimenez, Raisel Iglesias held them, silent. Then you go to game 3. Brandon Nimmo, you see the picture there. Walk-off home run in the bottom of the 9th. Started off with the drag bunt for a base hit by Jeff McNeil, who's been struggling. Luis Severino, some people didn't like the way he pitched. I thought he was fine. He did what he had to do, kept the Mets in the game, 5 innings, 4 hits, 2 earned runs, 3 walks, 4 Ks. You want to see him go 6, but sometimes, you can't get what you want. But Brandon Nimmo, game-winning home run in the 9th. What are some of your takeaways, David, from this series? Is there anything I missed that you want to touch on?
No. I'm actually more intrigued about the fact that, again, no surprises with Quintana start. This brother has gone down tremendously. He's heard it from almost every fan possible, even the ones that we know. They've given him criticism, and it's well deserved. But I'm more intrigued about the Christian Scott's performance. I was very excited to go see him live. I wanted to go see him live, just because it's his home debut. We've all spoken about this kid and what he's done in the minors. I know certain Met fans were complaining that he had gave up 6 hits and he kind of looked a little bit, it was a little bit like up and down. But you also got to understand, this brother had he was pumping 95, 96 miles per hour on his fastball. He was attacking hitters, did not care. He gave up the home run to Arcia, and next at bat went down the middle on a fastball. Like, you could see the confidence within him. The nerves weren't there. And like you said, I agree with you when you said that he had a really good. I was impressed with his start. It was very, very solid. Obviously, you wanted it to be a little bit different, but the offense tends to when it comes to great pitching performance, the offense tends to be quiet. So, it's unfortunate, but I think Christian Scott was a key for me, just because of how he pitched in Tampa and his anticipation coming to Citi Field, and the way he was able to attack a lot of hitters, especially with a very solid lineup like the Braves.
Look, I was trying not to put any expectations, and I talked about this with Dexter Henry on the New York Post and SNY. They're asking about, what are your thoughts on Christian Scott and this start coming up? And I was trying to make sure, we didn't get, too far ahead with him. Obviously, he had that great start in Tampa. That's a different type of lineup, man, than these Braves. Right. There's basically an all-star at every corner of that lineup. And the fact that he got 8 strikeouts off of those guys, only held them to 3 runs, he pretty much kept the Mets in the game. To me, that I know there is a definite definition to what a quality start is. I still think that he had a quality start against the Braves on Saturday, and it just stunk that this Mets offense could not give us anything. And when we talked about this, I was like, you know what? Watch them tease us in the bottom of the 9th. And that's exactly what they did. After JD Martinez gets the hit, I think there was a
McNeil
walk. McNeil walked, Bader base hit, and then Beatty to end the game with a kind of line drive fly out. I thought that might have dropped, but it wasn't meant to be. And Christian Scott takes his first loss, but he has nothing to be ashamed of. He pitched very well in my eyes, especially against that Braves lineup. It's just what you want to see. When you think about Jose Quintana, man, Adrian Houser's coming back into the rotation on Wednesday. I know a couple people in here are upset about it. Our guy, Ibby, says, make sure you start your Phils in fantasy on Wednesday. Ibby from Tilmetz's Park. Make sure you check that out on Wednesday as well. So he'll probably be covering that game and talking about that. And that should be a fun episode for Ibby. But yeah, man. A lot of people, Rosie K, I don't understand letting Houser pitch. Seems like they're putting this game off. Look, and I think it goes to what Keith says. They're going to give the rotation a day of rest. They have so many games that they have to play in a row, right now. You talk about with the Phillies and the series coming up this weekend. So they got about 7 games now that they got to play, and that's on top of this series that they struggled in. So,
Right.
they're not it seems like they don't want to go to Tyler McGill, and there's I don't know who tweeted it out today. I think it might have been Anthony DiComo or Pat Ragazzo, and it was about putting McGill in the bullpen at some point. So that might happen. I disagree with that fact. I think that Hauser should be the one to stay in the bullpen. We've seen his stats. I think Carson from Mets Weekly had posted his stats as a starter and his stats as a reliever, and he has like a 1.7 something ERA as a reliever. Leave him there. He pitched well on Friday as a reliever, so I would leave him there.
Right. Yeah. I think you tend to I look at this as a David Peterson situation. David Peterson was struggling as a starter. You put him in the bullpen and he looked very well. I've everybody that in here in this chat knows me very well, that I've always said that David Peterson needs to be left alone in the bullpen. And yeah, I haven't been proven wrong yet. I think it's the same thing with Hauser. Hauser pitched well on Friday in the bullpen, and I think when you see when you see a player be more comfortable in a certain spot or in a certain position, whether he's on the field, whether he's in the in the lineup, you tend to leave it there just so they could keep building momentum. So I think if I think what Keith said was right. I think they want to give the rotation rest by putting Hauser in there, but I think Mendoza, should just have him, just keep him there after whatever happens on Wednesdays, whatever happens, but keep him there, keep him back in the bullpen after.
Shout out to my guy Mets Menace, who's in there. Menace is everywhere. Menace is also nowhere. Menace moves in mysterious ways. That's my guy on Twitter, Mets Menace. Make sure you're following him on there as well. Look, this offense has struggled, and Shea Parking Lot brings up a good point. Ever since we lost Francisco Alvarez, this offense has kind of just been, I don't want to say non-existent, but it almost feels that way. Like, it's hard to watch these games and get excited for the bottom of the innings when you're at home, when this team is not scoring, or anytime these guys are up to at bat, because they've just all been struggling so really bad. And what we saw on Saturday, I don't know if the philosophy has to change. I don't know, switching up the lineup, and they did that on Sunday by batting DJ Stewart in the leadoff spot, and it seemed to have worked, right? Like DJ Stewart was, I think, on 3 times during that game. So I don't know if we are through the next week and this offense continues to struggle, I feel like at some point it's time to say bye-bye to Eric Chavez and Jeremy Barnes. I don't know why there are 2 hitting coaches to begin with. I don't know how many teams implement that. It's the first time I've ever seen it done, especially with the Mets. But I think it is definitely time to consider a different type of philosophy when it comes to this Mets offense.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you told me on Saturday that this regime has only had one winning season since being put together. And at some point, if you're the Mets, you're thinking to yourself that exact thought. Listen, what are we going to do to get this regime to kind of get in a different direction? And if it has to start from the hitting coach, getting a new hitting coach, getting something fresh, getting something new to kind of bring in a new philosophy, maybe that works, and then maybe that is it. I mean, I was always under the impression that because they found success under Eric Chavez, that it would just be him. But I think they thought Jeremy Barnes I don't know what it was that they found in Jeremy Barnes that they decided to keep him. I wasn't a fan of it. A lot of Met fans weren't a fan of it that I know. And you're kind of seeing the result of it. It's looking like the Jeremy Barnes effect is kind of taking over. And it's unfortunate because I like Eric Chavez, but we haven't seen that consistency that we saw in 2022 when Eric Chavez was the guy, alone. So
yeah. No, you're right. And Jose Lopez Moya says to leave Chavez and fire Jeremy Barnes. We know what Chavez is, right? He's more of a field guy, old purist type baseball guy. Jeremy Barnes is that, analytics, numbers type of coach. And I don't know if they're both feeding these guys different information, but
Right.
I'm trying to use what's the best term to use here. I don't know, like that aura around this offense and dugout, it just looks off, right? And you look at even
Right.
Pete Alonso, like I know he's struggling. I know he's in a slump, but even when he slumped last year, right? When he got hit in the wrist and came back way too early, he went on a slump after that in his return. And we're
Yeah.
like, oh, it's the wrist. It's the wrist. He's hurt. He came back too early.
Right.
He didn't look as miserable as he does right now. He just
Right.
doesn't look like like he wants to be out there. And
Yeah.
maybe it's just the facial expression they catch him at that time.
Yeah.
I just don't know. He's just a lot of the players just seem off, and obviously this guy gets frustrated all the time, Jeff McNeil,
Right.
and it just this whole team just I don't know if it just feels like they're going through the motions or what. I'm at a point where I can't even listen to them talk at the press conference. There's nothing that they can
Right.
say that is
Right.
going to make me feel good because or confident,
Right.
because they're just
Mm.
like, oh, we're going to work on it. It got some bad at bat. I don't even know what to do when you're watching this team anymore.
Yeah, they're not working the count like everything goes back to 2022. It's a comparison to be had. In 2022, they were working the count, they were laying off bad pitches. A lot of guys were you know having good at bats consistently, and now it's not there. And you can see it with Pete. Pete hit had two good hits yesterday, and normally you see him kind of get a little bit energized, and he was just, you could kind of tell he's a bit down, but maybe it's probably because he's like, I don't want to overwork myself with the emotion, because I don't want to show this emotion and then get back into. I think he understands, he feels the effect of the slump. And I think a lot of them do, because it's not just him. It's not just Lindor. It's a lot of guys that are going through. Brandon Nimmo. Brandon Nimmo hit the home run, and it's like, finally, is this going to be the spark for Brandon Nimmo as a leadoff hitter to get some consistency? I thought it was after the Atlanta series in Atlanta, when he hit those two home runs, and then he got back into a slump. Harrison Bader had a point where he was hitting at one point cold again. It's through the entire lineup. So I don't think it has anything to do with Carlos Mendoza. I think it has more to do with just that these boys know that they're in a slump, and they want to hit. It's just one of those things that it happens. But to pinpoint it on one player, I think that's unacceptable, because it's not like one player is going through it, but everybody else is hitting. Every single guy in that lineup is going through a struggle right now, and it's unfortunate.
Yeah, and you can't put, like you said, you can't put the blame on one player. I know, like, some people don't like Lindor, so they do it to Lindor, and then like you
Right,
see what
right,
this whole team as a collective and as a core, as we talked about, they just haven't been successful. And Rosie K brings up the point: are the Mets hitting coaches at fault, or is it the players? Maybe this is who the Mets are. And you know what? I'm not saying you're wrong here, Rosie K. It's
yeah,
possible. It's
I
quite
agree.
possible that this core is just not it. We talked about it at the game on Saturday, right? We said, they
Mhm.
haven't won. They've only had one winning season, right? You look
Right,
at other teams. They played St. Louis last week, and I don't know if I brought this up on my podcast or show, but you know, the Cardinals have had only, or the last time the Cardinals had back-to-back losing seasons, 1958 and 1959. Like, look how long ago that was. Outside
right,
of that, they've had winning seasons, or maybe had one bad losing season. You look at the Yankees, like they don't have like losing seasons. Like, I mean, the Mets got to get to that point before they can be a playoff team, before they can be the NL champs, before they can be
right,
world champs. Like, find a consistency in winning. And they got to
right.
find those type of players here, because this is what, year year 4, year 5. No, this is 4, right?
This
2020.
this is year 5, if I'm not year 4 or
1,
5,
2, 3,
one of those.
4.
Yeah,
If you
2020.
count towards
Um,
2019, right? Like with
right,
Pete, Nimmo, and McNeil, because that's when they were up. And obviously Nimmo's been here longer. But since 2019, when all these guys were together, and then you add Lindor, they had a winning season in 19. 20, they were
right,
terrible. 21, they fell apart. 22, they had a winning season but fell apart at the end. And
Mhm.
23, awful. And right now they're off to a, mediocre start. So
Right.
something's got to give, right? Like, obviously you're not going to get rid of Francisco Lindor. He's got a big contract. You're not going to get rid of Brandon Nimmo. He's, also has a big size contract. I think it might be time to move on from a guy like McNeil. Pete is going to be a free agent, but we don't know what's going to happen with him. Now
Right.
a lot of people are, after seeing what's this start is, they're like, oh, you know what? Maybe we just don't resign Pete, or maybe we trade him at the deadline.
I was just gonna bring that up. I think, listen, if you're at a point by the trade deadline where this team doesn't look like they're gonna even be in for a third wild card, or it's like up and down to where it gets horrible, you might want to get yourself into a situation where you're like, listen, if we can win big at this trade deadline, trade Pete, and try to get some good prospects back, and then see if we can re-sign them, I'll take that. Or try to keep the conversations going. Maybe you try to get something for him, before free agency, where then that way you don't have to stick yourself into that situation, because it's you got Scott Boras on your hands. Scott's gonna do everything he can to get Pete a very respectable contract. You have fans that are up and down about what he deserves and what he doesn't deserve. So it's just a matter of time before you really hit that decision. But it's getting to there, because you bring up McNeil. Since he's got that contract, he hasn't lived up to it. Let's just be real. He has not lived up to it. And now that you have Mauricio here, even though obviously he's out for the whole season, there's a good opportunity he's coming back next year. You have a young kid who has shown that he can hit up here. So it's like, I got a guy under that contract who is not performing to what he needs to be, or he hasn't really gotten to his 2022 year. And I got a young kid who has shown within the last 2 months before the season ended last year that he could be here. I might have to go the young route and just kind of build through my young stars while I still have my vets in their prime, like a Lindor, like an Alonso, if they resign, Alonso. So they might have to do that restructuring. But I have this thing where I think David Stearns does not want to go into a tank mode. Think he wants to build within, but still try to contend, like he has said in the past. And again, I think you're kind of seeing that, but it's just a matter of time where you're kind of looking at yourself like, hey, this team, we've all said in the offseason, this team could get a wild card. But when is it time to realize they might not even be consistent enough to get to a wild card? Do we have to kind of blow it up a little bit at the trade deadline and kind of get some pieces back so we won't have to, shoot ourselves in the foot?
Yeah. And, when you think about Jeff McNeil and you mentioned his contract, that could go down as one of the worst contracts the Mets have signed. And people forget he signed that after he became batting champion. And he hasn't really produced since then. I mean, we're like, this is like Carlos Baerga type, production from
Right.
Jeff McNeil right now. Alomar style. We're not getting much from him. I know he had the big drag bunt to get things going in the ninth yesterday, but besides that, man, he has been struggling like crazy. And I know it's frustrating a lot of Met fans. A lot of Met fans want to trade him and want to move on from Jeff McNeil. You mentioned Ronnie Mauricio next year possibly coming back, and I liked him at second base when I saw him last year. I think we were at the game he hit his were we at the game he hit his first home run?
Yes,
That was like
when
a
he hit his
moonshot.
first home run to Coca-Cola Corner, we were there. Yes, yes. But
Yeah.
it's
Got
not
some
even
big
just
moments
that.
with these kids, man.
You could tell how effortless and how smooth and clean his double play with Lindor looks compared to Jeff McNeil. It's just like, bro, this brother looks like it was like a fresher breath air when they had McNeil playing the outfield and they had Mauricio playing second base. It was like every time Mauricio came up for a ground ball, it looked fresh. The double play between him and Lindor just looked beautiful. It's just like maybe that's the route they need to go, because yes, he's okay defensively, but McNeil's bad ever since he got that contract. It's like it's hurting the team, and you can't
Yeah.
withstand that anymore. You got to start making decisions if you want to keep contending.
Shout out to the chat, always helping me out here. Keith saying that the two hitting coach teams in the league are the Orioles, which that's been pretty successful for. You got the Tigers, Twins, and as well as the Mets and the Giants. So it's a small amount of teams. Not too many of them do it.
That's
So
right.
we'll see if more teams implement that in the future. I'm not a big fan of it unless, I mean, they're just two different philosophies. So
Right.
it's crazy. And Menace goes the vibes, which in regards to what this Mets lineup has been giving off. The vibes have just not been great. The team has been boring, but
I agree.
we do
Yeah.
have one offensive player, and Maureen brought it up. Nimmo's the real star of this team. She's not wrong there. I mean, Brandon Nimmo has been the best hitter on this team so far. The fact that he came back, I mean, you saw him Saturday, looked very uncomfortable at that at bat. I thought we were going to lose him for a little longer than what he said, because anytime these players say, "Oh, I'll be okay, I'll be back next day," it's always they're out for a couple months. So the fact that he came back, it was only a irritation uh, outside of not being a strain, which is good. He comes back into the game late and hits the game-winning home run. But Brandon Nimmo has just been the guy that you want to see. And I can't remember where the question was, because this is a question that I have talked about, and I talked about it with Tone on the podcast last week about Brandon Nimmo. It's junior swing, man. Mets need to move Nimmo down the lineup, and like Shea and Sons and other people on Twitter have been saying, I think we're all in agreement here. At some point, I think Brandon Nimmo has to move in more of a RBI position, whether it's second, third, fourth. I wouldn't put him fifth. I liked him to get more bats, so that second, third, fourth spot would be great. Where would you like to see Brandon Nimmo? Are you interested at all in moving Brandon Nimmo down the lineup?
Absolutely. Just do it. Just do a reverse. Have Lindor lead off and have Brandon Nimmo go second. Lindor has proven, and Lindor's numbers as a leadoff hitter are great. He has proven that he could be a leadoff hitter. And I think I mean, I like Lindor when he was in the two spot as well. But I think if you kind of give Lindor his respect as a leadoff hitter, I think you could kind of see some consistency going in with Lindor, and you can see some consistency with Brandon Nimmo, because Brandon Nimmo, there's not a lot of pressure in the two spot compared to the leadoff hitter. As a leadoff hitter, you're getting things started. So it's like, at least in the second hole, it's not as much pressure for Brandon Nimmo as it would be as a leadoff hitter. So I think if you kind of just do the reverse, where you have Lindor lead off and Brandon Nimmo go second, I think you can see some more beneficial at bats between those two, especially Brandon Nimmo.
Yeah, man. I like that idea of having Lindor bat lead off. He's done it in the past in Cleveland, so that works out for him. I'd even give Starling Marte an opportunity if it arises, because he could steal bases.
Right. Right.
Um, Originally, I thought like that would be a role for Jeff McNeil, but he just swings at the first pitch way too much. I mean, you want to bat him, I guess, the least amount of time, especially with all the struggling he
Right.
has been doing. And Keith makes no bones about it. Make bye-bye, make see ya, make adios. Menace says McDonald's, which is where he belongs. So yeah, man. Jose Lopez Moyes says the Mets won't be a playoff team until Stearns throws away his mini market money ball philosophy. It would be dumbass to get rid of Pete. So we'll see what happens with Pete. I mean, I am not certain. Like I thought I was certain about Jacob deGrom returning as a Met, and then he ended up signing somewhere else. So I'm not
Yeah.
certain what's going to happen with Pete. And I say if he gets traded, I don't think they resign him. Like how many players have been traded and gone back to their team in free agency the year of? I think it was like Aroldis Chapman is the only person I can remember to do
Right.
something like that. Shout out to Yuki Matsui, who's also in the chat as well. Let's get, here we go. Matt A.B. Ibanez coming up with the stats. My guy, 314, 417, 628 with a 1.044 OPS. He's got 4 doubles, 4 home runs, 7 walks, and 12 RBIs. I mean, that's how much more can you ask from Brandon Nimmo and what he's done so far in the season? I know he went through a slump too to start the season. He had a great series in Atlanta, struggled again, and has now picked it up. And I think he's finally found himself where we need the rest of the guys to find that consistency, like Lindor, like Alonso and, JD Martinez as well, everybody else as well in there too. And you can't forget about DJ Stewart leading off, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, yeah, and he got 2 hits out of that. So, I gotta give him credit. I gotta give him credit.
yeah,
I gotta, yeah. That's impressive. That's
I
impressive.
think he called him the ShopRite Schwarber. So, that's definitely
Man.
where we're at with him. But let's get into this series preview. We're going to talk about the 2 games coming up. I got some matchups. I got the pitching probables as we have Sean Manaea taking on Christopher Sanchez. Manaea's 2-1 with 3.31 ERA. Christopher Sanchez 2-3 with 3.22 ERA. And then you got Jose Butto on Tuesday, who's 1-2 with a 3 ERA against Aaron Nola, 4-2 with a 3.67 ERA. Which matchup here are you looking forward to the most?
I'm looking forward to the Jose Butto and Aaron Nola matchup. Aaron Nola is definitely hittable, and he tends to struggle against the Mets every time he pitches against the Mets. And Jose Butto, I think, is due for a really, really, really good start. This brother, he has the command. He has a really good fastball. His where he locates is solid. Um, just his outing, it was kind of his last outing was okay, I think, but I think he's due for a really good start. So I'm more intrigued. I'm very confident what Manaea could do. I'm more intrigued about Jose Butto and how he could pick himself back up.
Yeah, this is another lineup that it could be very scary.
Right.
Just like the Braves, they're off to a hot start, leading the NL East. Yeah, I agree with you. I think Butto versus Nola is the matchup of this 2-game set before they
Right.
head to Philly for the other 2 games. What I like about Butto is even though he'll get off to some rough starts and struggle a little bit, dude always battles, man. He'll give you some like that third, fourth, and fifth inning from Butto is always him fighting back and giving you. Sometimes he'll give you some quick innings. I would like to see the stats of like Jose Butto in the third, fourth, and fifth inning. I think that he's done well. Obviously, he deserves better from this, and it was great to see. Even though he gave up 3 runs against the Cardinals, it was great to see the Mets offense actually pick him up because he should be right now probably like 3-2 or something like that. I mean, he deserves more wins than he's received.
Right. Yeah. That's why I said. That's what I'm saying. Like I think his last start, he kind of struggled a little bit giving up those 3 runs, but then kind of got back into it after giving up those 3 runs. Then the offense kind of helped him out a little bit, but you would like to see him kind of see what he could do against a tough lineup, like you said. The Phillies are no joke right now. So you kind of it's a good how do you say it? It's a good homework for him. It's a good competition for him to really see what he can do. I feel confident about the kid. We had conversations even last year about seeing him more. And I wanted to see him in the beginning of the year to start the season. And now that he's here, I have no doubts about the kid at all. I really like his stuff. I like his confidence. Like I said, I think his fastball is great. He's got some movement in his changeup that I like. There's a lot of good things to pick up from him. It's just trying to see if he can consistently get out the first 2 or 3 innings without having to struggle a little bit. If he can do that, he could definitely be a guy that we're talking about seeing in this rotation from now on without any questions at all.
Yeah, I want to see more of what we saw from him against the Royals, striking out 9
Right.
batters,
Mhm.
completely dominating that team. We saw him next up against the Dodgers, and obviously he didn't have the same stuff, but he was able to battle and keep the Mets in the game, and eventually the Mets did win that game. Same thing with his battle against St. Louis. You want to see the same thing again in against Philly as well.
Right.
What we've seen from guys like Quintana, who the last 2 starts have just been, I'll say, unacceptable. That's what I feel like. I mean,
Mhm.
the guy's giving up home runs. He doesn't have that put away pitch. But I feel like Budo is starting to gain enough confidence to have one of those put away pitches, like we kind of saw from Christian Scott on Saturday. And if
Right.
those two guys pitch to this potential that we've seen from them, and Christian Scott continues to deliver, and Jose Budo continues to deliver all season, there's no doubt that next season those guys could be staples in this rotation and could be a big part of it, where maybe the Mets don't have to sign 2 or 3 big starting pitchers. This is going to cost a lot of money, right? They have to
Right.
revamp the
Right.
whole rotation again because everyone's a free agent outside of Senga. So if you can have
Right.
Christian Scott and Jose Budo be a part of that rotation next year, I think that's a solid core to put in that group.
Yeah, he's your 1, 2, 3 right there. You don't even have to worry about it. And then if you could figure out the 4 and 5, whether it's Peterson going back, obviously it's not my cup of tea, but if that's the route you're going, and if you're trying to bring McGill back in, then that your 4 and 5, obviously that could be it. Or if Sevy continues the stride that he's on, you bring Sevy back on another
Yep.
1-year deal. You know what I'm saying? That's the thing about Sevy, is that so many people were trying to tell me the day that he signed that it was a stupid signing. And I said, you got to understand, this brother only came from one organization. He's getting a chance to rewrite his wrongs in the same state, same city, just under a different organization. And so far, he has not let anybody down. This brother has really changed everything within his mechanics, with his confidence. You see that, the old Sevy's kind of back, and I love it. So you got to give these guys time to really, gel and develop. And, it was last year was one of his worst season of his career. And I think now that he's been able to change it, if he continues this going on up until September, if we do make the wild card, into the wild card, if he continues that success and that stride, you could talk about a conversation about the Mets bringing him back, and I wouldn't be upset.
Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked at all if Sevy or even Sean Manaea returns. I know Manaea has that like deal worked out, right, where he could become a free agent at the end of the year, or he can
Right.
stay on with the team. So if he continues to pitch well, he'll probably opt for free agency. But I wouldn't be shocked if either of those two come back and be
Right.
a part of this rotation next year. And I assume the Mets will go after at least one 1A type ace, whether it's a Corbin Burns or a Max Fried. I don't know who else is out there. Those two are the ones that come to my head at the
Right.
top. So I know that Wheeler resigned and a lot of these other guys resigned, so they're not going to be available. But at least Corbin Burns at the moment, and as well as Max Fried, are available. So we'll see what happens with that rotation and how it plays out. But I want to get into some matchups. And shout out to the 171 people who are in this room right
Yes,
now. I
sir. Yes,
appreciate
sir.
all of you guys. Make sure you're following Top Bunk Sports. He's got a YouTube page as well. Make sure you're liking this video, following Subway to Shea. Yeah, man, it's always fun bringing these series previews and having guest co-hosts, and always fun chatting it up with my guy David here. So let's get into one of the matchups here. This one favors the Phillies. It's Nick Castellanos tonight against Sean Manaea. He's got 571 batting average, 2 home runs, 3 RBIs, and 7 at bats, 2 OPS. I always bring up some of these matchups. I like to get more of ones that have more at bats. This one was the best one for the Phillies tonight. And the fact that he has 2 home runs against Manaea, I think it is telling. So this is a guy that I would be on the lookout for as the Mets take on, and as Manaea takes on the Phillies. Nick Castellanos, who is a all-star in his own right. We've seen him become an all-star, and he does well. For the Mets, on the other hand, and there was really no good matchup for the Mets against Sanchez. They haven't really seen much of him. So I did go to the Wednesday game. A lot of people might not want to see this, but Jeff McNeil in 42 at-bats, right, against Aaron Nola, 310 batting average, a home run and 7 RBIs, 825 OPS. If there's ever a time for Jeff McNeil to have a big game, or to even have a big series, this is it right here, right? I mean, it's the opportunity is right there for him against the guy who hits well. 42 at bats is a lot, so we'll see if he can do that as well and hit well And then you got Alec Boehm in 8 at bats against Jose Butto, 625, 3 home runs, 7 RBIs. I think this definitely had to be down in Philly for sure. Like I don't remember it
Yeah.
being here at Citi Field. This had to be one of those games down in Philadelphia. I think it was that 2022 game when Mark Canha had that comeback. I think Alex Boehm
Yeah,
also
'cause
hit a couple home
he
runs
was
there.
starting that game. Yeah, he was starting that game.
Yeah.
So it could have been. It could have been. Yeah, it was surprising to me when you just brought that up. I was like, wait, 625? I was like, hold up.
Yeah. It's only 8 at bats, but the fact that like again with like the same thing with Castellanos, 3 home runs out of that, 7 RBIs. That's someone the Mets are gonna want to look into. And I bring
Right.
these up like I last series I brought up Marcell Ozuna, who's been a Met killer. These are guys that you gotta they gotta pay attention to and try to get them out. I mean, Alec Boehm is not a superstar, but I mean, he hits well against Budo, and that could be the difference between the Mets winning a game or not. And the final one for the Mets, Pete Alonso, 46 at bats against Aaron Nola, 348, 5 home runs, 11 RBIs, 1.127 OPS. Dude better go ham on that game.
Yeah. Yeah. I listen, if it's like you said, if there's any game, if there's any series, if there's any game for a McNeil or Alonso to get hot and just wake up, it's this one. Like these guys have figured out Aaron Nola to the T. And I'm expecting Alonso to have a good game today, but I'm more concerned about what McNeil's gonna do, because Alonso has always shown stretches of just coming out of a slump at certain times, but McNeil tends to always stay in it longer. And I think when you know as a hitter that you're going against a guy that you've always hit great against, I think that kind of brings some type of like, all right, like this is a good time for me to get out of that. So I'm more focused on what McNeil is doing, just because also who knows, those 2 hits that Alonso had yesterday and those 2 RBIs could be the spark. McNeil really hasn't had that spark yet for us to be like, oh wait, he's kind of back. You know what I'm saying? Like he goes up and then it's right back down to the usual. And that's kind of why fans are already sick and tired of him. So I'm kind of, with the good numbers that he has against Aaron Nola, I'm kind of more intrigued on seeing what McNeil is going to do.
And at least Pete, you talked about his 2 hits yesterday. He had, 2 hits against St. Louis. He had another 2 hits on Friday against the Rays. So he's starting to get out of this funk that he's been in. And I expect him, especially against Aaron Nola, to hit him pretty well.
Right.
Going back to some of the things that were said, especially about signing free agents here. Yuki Matsui says signing Burns or Fried would be nice, but get Roki Sasaki. What are your thoughts on Roki Sasaki?
That I don't know too much about him. But to be honest with you, I won't say too much. I won't speak because, like I said, I don't know too much about him. But I know that the Freed one is kind of like a eye opener for me, just because you need another lefty. And if they don't, it's like you brought up with the Sean Manaea thing. If Manaea doesn't come back, if he has a very good season this year going on, and he wants to test free agency, then what an upgrade that would be if Freed comes, if they can get Freed. You have yourself a good lefty that you can replace if Manaea doesn't come back. So I think the Burns thing, it's a little iffy for me, even though I wouldn't be shocked, because obviously he's David Stearns, he's Burns is there, I wouldn't be shocked. But I think more importantly, they kind of should go after a lefty, especially if Sean Manaea doesn't come back, because you already have 3 lefties in your rotation within Abudo, Christian Scott, let's just say, and then obviously Senga. So I think picking up a Freed, I think that would boost your rotation a lot if you pick up a Freed. But
And I
I
think
want to talk about Roki. I don't know too much about, so I don't want to put nothing out there, and then people's like, what is he talking about?
no, I like Max Fried as well. Not just after what we saw Saturday, but I mean, he's pitched well against the Mets. He's pitched well at Citi Field. And that's a guy that the Mets should definitely keep their eye on to kind of steal someone away from the division rivals, especially
Right.
the Atlanta Braves.
Right.
And he's young. It's not like we're getting Tom Glavine in his later years. So maybe this will work out on the Mets' behalf. Stoney814 also mentioning Walker Buehler as a possible free agent. He just coming off of Tommy John surgery and has been instituted back into the Dodgers rotation. That's another guy that the Mets could possibly look into. They got options, man. I think at least if they could get at least one of these guys, and then you fill out the rotation, like you mentioned, Sevy or Manaea, and then you have Christian Scott and obviously Jose Buto. Because you also got to think about, Mike Vassell, when is his time coming soon? Dom Hamill, those guys are waiting in the wings. The Blake Tidwells of the world, they'll be waiting in the wings as well. And I don't know the structure. I don't remember the structure of Kodai Senga's contract and when he can opt out, but that's something that the Mets have to consider as well if he does decide to opt out. So we'll see what happens. That's a lot, further on down the line for the Mets. But Shea Parking Lot says that you're going to hit some traffic. So with that said, I know you got to get to the game. We're going to wrap up this series preview here. I appreciate everyone for tuning in, all 175 of you. It's been a lot of fun doing this show with my guy Top Bunk, who is obviously always welcomed on this podcast, and we will have him on in the future as well, whether it's the series preview, whether it's a podcast. Make sure you're following him, Top Bunk Sports, at Top Bunk Sports, as well as on YouTube. It's also at Top Bunk Sports, right?
Yes, sir. Everything at Top Bunk Sports.
And for me, Subway to Shea, all this information you can find out on the bottom. Make sure you like this video. Make sure you are sharing it with everybody. Get everybody to watch it as well and to subscribe to the YouTube page. Like Maureen says, hit that like button. And Junior Swingman has the best way to close this out. Let's put the Phillies in a body bag. Let's finish them off.
That. Yes, sir.
David,
yes, sir.
you enjoy the game tonight. I know you got to get out of here. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Appreciate you all. Until next time, this has been Anthony Rivera and the Subway to Shea podcast. Always remember, let's go Mets.